Ladles and jelly spoons, welcome back to Badgerworks. Today, a treat especial, as a certain engineer might say. You'll notice that today I'm on a black background, and there's a reason for that, because in something that I think a lot of people were waiting for quite some time, this is a USB powered smoke machine. Now, it's not the smallest one I've ever made. In fact, this is the smallest one I've ever made. But we're not talking about this one today, we're going to talk about this one for a minute. So, USB powered smoke machines. Now I'm going to use this one for a bit of a demonstration. So I've got here a normal cheapo plug-in pack, and if I plug that in there, I don't really be able to see it. See, the smoke's coming out quite fast. Right, there's a way around this. I'll take a piece of tube. There you go. So you can see there's actually quite a lot of smoke coming out of there. Obviously it's not billows of smoke, but that's not what this particular machine was meant for. But what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you how to make one of these. But one for a specific purpose. So, let's get started. So this is the box I'm going to use. It's about 38 millimeters wide, it's about 52 millimeters long and about 15 millimeters deep. So what we need to do first of all, actually let's just take the screws out of there so they're not running and banging about. So for the actual box itself, we don't really need to do a lot. One thing I like to do with these, because they are only plastic and it does get quite warm in there, is I like to line it with this. Now this is duct tape, not duct tape, duct tape. It's basically self-adhesive aluminium foil. And as you can see, it's very shiny and it's metal. So I like to line the inside of the box just to reflect the heat away from the plastic and back towards the heating element. We'll do that in a moment. The main thing we need to do is work on the lid. So what we need to do is we need to fit the fan and make some holes for the exhaust and for the heater wires. Now we need a fan to push the smoke out of the box. Now I've got two fans here. They're exactly the same size, 25 millimeter, but there's one critical difference between the two. If we look at the back, we can see this one is 5 volt and this one is 12 volt. I'm going to use this one. Now I know what you're thinking, why would you use a 12 volt fan on a 5 volt system? Well, there's a reason, there is method to my madness. If I put this 5 volt fan on, it pushes the smoke out really fast. Now you saw in the intro the box that I built there, that has a 5 volt fan on it, and it pushes the smoke out really fast. I don't want the smoke to come out too quick for this particular application. So instead of using the 5 volt, I'm going to use the 12 volt. It will run on 5 volts, but it will run at about half speed. So it's enough to push the smoke out, but it pushes it out in a much more gentle fashion. So that's what we're going to use. Now to fit the fan, obviously we're using the 25 millimeter fan. I've made this. This is a little template. And obviously you could just mark the holes from the fan, but because I do a lot of these, I made this little template. So we just put that at one end, and what that basically does is it gives us the 4 corner holes and the center hole. So I'll just put that down like that. Square it up. It doesn't have to be perfect. Take a scribe and just mark the location of all the holes. And I'll also mark a hole there, and the same on the other side. And those will be for the heater wires. I'll also mark a hole roughly there. I'll measure that just to make sure it's in the middle, but that'll be for the exhaust. So what we can do now is take this over, I don't know whether you can see that, but the holes are all marked. We can take that over to the drill press and we can drill the holes, drill out the big hole for the middle and drill a hole for the exhaust. So I'll go away and do that and I'll fetch it back when it's done. Now there's one more thing we can use this template for, and that's to cut this. Now this is a bit of mesh, supposedly stainless steel. I very much doubt it, but this came from a splash guard, a frying pan splash guard I got from the pound. You can buy 2 of them for £1. What I like to do is put a piece of this on the inside of the fan, and basically what it does is, again, it acts like a splash guard, so that if when the heater's running, it pops and fizzes and crackles, and this basically helps catch those little spits so they don't end up in the fan and end up all over the place. It's just to try and keep as much of the fluid as possible inside the machine. So fortunately this piece is pretty much exactly the right size. So I'll cut that to length quickly. The nice thing with this is it's so thin you can just cut it with scissors. Cut that. So we put the 2 pieces together, turn it around the other way, make sure it's lined up, find the holes, take our scribe and just push it through the hole like that, you see, and that's made a nice little hole. And then we'll do the same down here, try not to stick it in my finger, and we'll do the same thing on here. And finally here. And there we go, there's our little splash guard with the holes all ready to go. So put that to one side until we need it. So here's our lid cut out. I cut the big hole with a step drill. I mean, you can use a Dremel or, you know, hobby knife, whatever. What we need to do now is fit the fan and the mesh. So here's our 12-volt fan. So we'll pop that on there. We'll put our mesh on the back. So now we can put the screws in. These are 2mm machine screws, and they've each one's got a little flat washer on it. Pop that through the hole. Line that one up. Pop that through the hole, like that. Then we can put the fan on. Then we put another flat washer on the outside and a nut, like so. Now we put the other 2 in. Just open those holes up a bit because they're a bit small. One and 2. Same again, washer on each one. Ugh. These are very fiddly. You don't need to put 4 screws through really, or bolts as they are now. The reason I put 4 on is to pull the fan down square, because obviously you don't want the smoke coming out anywhere except the hole. So the tighter the joint you've got there, the less chance there is of smoke coming out where you don't want it to. Now we'll just take a pair of pliers, these will do, and a screwdriver. What we'll do is just hold the screw, hold the nut rather, and turn the screw. Now all the engineers out there watching this will be screaming at me doing this, but with these little tiny bolts it's not as important. Normally you would never, you would hold the screw and turn the nut, but for these little tiny ones it doesn't matter. Just make sure as you're going along that the fan still turns freely, because if you over tighten it you can actually stop the fan from spinning. And again, these do not need to be done up too tight. They're not, you know, it's holding a little tiny fan in place. You're not doing up a U-bolt. There we go. That's all they need. So that's done. Now, what are we going to use for our heating element? Now, people use all kinds of things. You can buy, for example, like these kind of nichrome wires and things like that. And these are, you calculate what resistance you want and you cut the wire to length and you coil it and all the rest of it. That's fine for certain applications, but quite frankly for these little USB powered ones you're better off just getting something like this. Now this is basically a pack that I bought from eBay, and there's different resistances and different types of coil. So you just pick the one that you want and they're pre-wound and away you go. So that's what I'm going to be using here, is just one of these pre-wound vape coils. For these, if you're going over 5 volts you'll need to make your own heater, but certainly for 5 volt or below just use something like this. I think this box was about a £5, and there's I think there's about 50 odd in there of varying different sizes and whatnot. More than enough. So yeah, or of course you can visit a vape shop and buy a coil from there. So yeah, that's certainly the easiest way to do it. So to make our heater we need a connector to connect the coil to the wires. So I'm going to use this. This is a straight butt connector. And the first thing we need to do is remove the insulation. Now obviously when you're using a knife, be careful, don't cut your fingers, etc. So we just very carefully cut down through the insulation like that, and we'll do the same on the other end. And then we take a pair of pliers, or we just peel the insulation back. You don't need to take it right off, just push it back enough just to break its grip on the insides, and then we can use a suitable poking device to push it out. And there we go. Now the next thing we need to do is cut this in half, which is a bit tricky. I like to use this. This is a JLC razor saw. This is very soft metal, it's very easy to cut. So just hold it with a pair of pliers and we cut it in half. Now if you look, I don't know whether you'll be able to see that, but in the end there you'll see there's a little tag, a little metal tag. We need to take that out. Now the way I do it is I just use a metal scribe and just hook it out, and it will just break off, and then we can get the wire inside, you see. Now we take our wire and our coil. I might just cut that down a touch actually. And this is where it gets a bit tricky. Place one end of the connector over the wire, hold it in place. Now the other end is for the heater coil. Now we take a pair of pliers and we crimp. one. And we do the same on the other side. Now you might find it doesn't grip, especially with these little tiny thin coils, it might not grip the coil very well. If it doesn't, just get right on the top of it, on the end of it, and just pinch it shut. And that's got it gripped quite nicely now. Now we take our lid, we poke the wires through the holes, like so. There we go. Now we need to make a wick. There are two things that you can use. The first thing is this. Let me take a piece out of here. This is Japanese linen, I believe it's known as. But it's almost like a cotton pad. And this is the kind of stuff they use to make wicks for vapes and whatnot. So you can use that. You can also use this. This is fiberglass rope. And it's sold primarily to edge the doors on wood fires and things like that, because it acts like rope, but it's woven out of fiberglass. Now the nice thing about fiberglass is because it's glass, it doesn't melt, it doesn't burn. I think you have to get it up to something like 900 degrees before it starts to be affected by heat. So it can be very good for this kind of thing, and definitely for larger smoke machines, this is the stuff you want to use. I think for what we're doing, I'm going to use a bit of this Japanese linen. So I've got a piece of our Japanese linen. It's basically just a cotton pad, as I said. I'm just going to cut a thin piece off, like that. And we take our coil. Now this is quite tricky. Just be careful not to damage the coil while you're doing this. But if you basically just roll it up and poke it through, and it should come out the other side like that. Basically, if you need to take a bit off, that's fine. You don't want it tight in there. You want it to be able to basically just twist inside, so it's not tight but it's not loose, if you see what I mean. Now pull the wires back through. We can take our box, and I've got here some vape fluid. This came from eBay. This is it's like what they call a base fluid. It doesn't have anything in it. There's no flavouring in it. There's no nicotine in it. So we just squirt some of that in the box. Don't need a massive amount, just a little bit, like that. And we'll put a little bit on the coil just to help it get on the cotton, rather, just to let it get started. And make sure the cotton is inside the box. And now we're ready to give it a test. Right, so here's the little beast all connected up. So I've got an 18650 here, one of the batteries I showed you earlier, and that is connected to a charging circuit here. So we can charge the battery, and at the moment I've just got it connected to this little rocker switch. This rocker switch isn't really rated highly enough for the amount of power this is drawing, but it will do for now. So let's switch it on and see what happens. Ready? Contact. And it's making smoke. Now it's not massive clouds of smoke. but then I don't want great clouds of smoke. For the application that this machine is going for, I don't want a huge amount of smoke. If I wanted lots of smoke, I would use either a more powerful battery, or I would use 2 batteries, or I'd use a different coil. There's all kinds of things you can do, but for what I want to do, this is putting out a perfect amount of smoke. You will see this smoke machine again in the application for which it was designed in a future video, so look out for that. And in the meantime, I hope this has been of interest to you. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks, bye. Just one final thing. This is a little sneak peek of how the thing's actually going to be used in the upcoming project. Anyway, as I said, thanks very much for watching. See you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.